Yo, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Joe Emilio Show. It is another Tech Tuesday, and we are continuing our series of Tech Tuesday, the future of tech. In this episode, we're going to talk about space travel, and I could see already in the comments people are already excited about it. Jannie, how are you doing? As always, Jannie is with me on these Tech Tuesday adventures.
Doing good, dude. It's almost the middle of the week, so it's almost downhill to the weekend. So yeah.
Is that what you keep on telling yourself to help you get through the day?
The only way I survive.
It's only halfway through the week. It's only halfway. Damn, dude. It's only Tuesday.
I know. Please stay positive. Stay positive.
All right. Well, before we get into what we're here to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that you can become a member now, and on a different program or system. So please go to the Support Me monthly link in the description below, and you'll be taken to a page where you just sign up, and it's 50 Rand a month. After 3 months, you get a Rebel hat of your choosing from the Rebel store, and hopefully you'll continue to support the channel after that. But you need to be a member for at least 3 months before you can get the hat. So please go check that out. And while you're at it, also if there's something on Rebel store and you wanna buy it, feel free to do so. Link also in the description. If you're new to this channel, please give this video a like and please subscribe to the channel. And if there's something really important that you want us to address tonight, don't forget that you can use the super chat function, which highlights your comment or question. And by YouTube law, I have to address it, or Jannie has to address it. So yeah, that's one way to get our attention. And then there's other ways that you can also donate to the channel to help me keep bringing you content on the YouTube sphere, if I can put it that way. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Jannie, what's happening?
Wow, space travel. So this is an interesting topic. I like space travel. I've can't say I wanted to be an astronaut since you're like a kid or something like that. I think kind of like everybody wants to be, but I've just found space travel quite fascinating, especially towards the end of like the space shuttle, when the space shuttle program came to an end in 2011. So yeah, that's been interesting with what's been happening in the space, and we need to ask this question: why space travel? So, and I think that's why this topic is so fun for me today, because if you think about it, we've been to the moon 50 years ago, and we've had a couple of other interesting missions, but space travel is still like this interesting thing that we wanting to do. And why are we doing this? So the two reasons that I could think about is, one, we might have some extinction event. I'm not saying that I have doomsday prophecies or anything, but we might have an extinction event. There's a reality for that, and there's actually something I'll mention a little bit later. That the European Space Agency is doing. But yeah, so the one is, we might get blown up. And the second one is we might want to just be a multi-planetary species. And, with that comes some options, because like, where do we go to? Now, as boring as it may sound, this isn't, I don't think we're going to see that hyperspace travel that we think we'll see in the jiffy. Will be somewhere, and I'll touch on that a bit later as well. But let's just look at the planets real quick, right? What is our options? Where can we go to, or where are we looking at going to? This is not, it's at scale. This is the sun. Sun is massive, and we'll see all the planets there on the left-hand side. There we see, and I'll try to zoom it in, is Earth on the left, and that little dot next to the Earth, that's the moon, and to the right of that is Mars. Now, sure. That just kind of like shows us.
So Mars is smaller than Earth. I did not know that.
Yeah, Mars is about half the size of Earth. Yeah.
There's not enough space for us.
No, but let's put it into a little more perspective. So this is the order of the planets, and our options are Venus. I think is actually a little bit closer to Earth than what Mars is, but That's irrelevant because Venus is a a hot acid bath essentially. It's so landing would be a little tricky, I think. So Venus is not an option. Mercury, it's a little close to the sun. It might get a little hot, so Mercury is not an option. So the next best option is Mars, and Mars, funny enough, is about, depending on when you and how far you travel, it's about 90 or 80 to 150 days from Earth. So so the options are basically Mars. But why Moon? Let's just talk about the Moon real quick, because I think there's fundamentally a few approaches in what we as Earth see as space travel. And the one option is we can go to the Moon, and the one option is we can go to Mars. Now, the Moon, I think, is not a viable long-term solution, although there is a lot of resources on the Moon. Gold, platinum being important resources for advanced electronics, and that's also important. I'll touch on that in a bit. There's water on the Moon. The problem, though, is one day on the Moon is almost 30 days. For us from Earth. So.
Okay, I'm trying. Okay, that is a very interesting fact. So one rotation of the Moon is 30 days.
Yeah, although the Moon doesn't rotate around the Earth, but if you were to face the sun, if you were to stand on the Moon and face the sun, it would take the sun 30 days to get back around to you. So
okay, I see what
that makes a moon day very, very long. So also not cool. The Moon is a little small as well. Has no atmosphere. Now, atmosphere is important because Mars does have an atmosphere. Not as cool as the Earth's one, but it's a usable one. So Mars has an atmosphere. But at most, I think the Moon will be a stopover for us. Now, there's some interesting space projects or space missions or whatever when it comes to the Moon. I think of one of which we will touch on later is Artemis. But important thing with the Moon is, and I did mention water, is water, H2O. If you split that hydrogen and oxygen and you liquefy that, you get rocket fuel. Now, rocket fuel is the geeky term for it. I think the space astronauts and people like to use like propellant or something, but you get rocket fuel. Now, you get different types of rocket fuel. Some rocket fuel is better. The rocket fuel we could potentially make on Mars would be better than using, and there's a specific name for this hydrogen, oxygen rocket fuel, but the type we can do on Mars is a bit better than what we can do on the Moon. But again, it's an option. And having a base on the Moon obviously gives us that, halfway stop, like a Shell Ultra City, if you'd like, on your way to
train station. Train stop.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be your layover. Like you would fly from South Africa to New York, but you have a layover in Germany somewhere. Like Moon is your Germany. So that's an option. And I can't remember when I said that, but there's actually two different approaches to getting to Mars. For instance, like NASA has an approach via the Moon, whereas SpaceX with Elon Musk has an approach straight to Mars, and they getting there slightly differently. And we've kind of like seeing the technology build up now as to where that happens. But before we go, let's quickly just look at Mars. Why Mars is important. Like I said, Mars is the closest in terms of like a habitable neighbor to us because it actually has a atmosphere. That contains like CO2, nitrogen, and some other elements. But the important part with that is we can grow plants in that if we compress that atmosphere. So that obviously sustainable from a food perspective, making oxygen, et cetera. Mars has some gravity. So 38% of Mars gravity is, compared to the Earth. So what it means is, if you weigh 100 kilograms on Earth, you'll weigh 38 kgs on Mars. You can bounce around, you can lift heavy stuff. It's pretty cool. Mars also has a day that's very close to Earth, so 24 hours and 37 minutes, 25 hours, 40 minutes for one Martian day. So, it comes very close to Earth. Temperature-wise, I think Mars gets very cold, but in terms of the hottest temperature, like 30 degrees, as opposed to Earth, that hottest temperature is like 60 degrees or something.
Mm. But how cold does it
Just
get?
from minus 140 or something. But I think that's okay. I think we can warm it up, though, right? It's easier to warm it up than to cool it down, I guess.
That's true.
Yeah, so that's why Mars, I think, is being chosen as that viable option. But again, see this as one planet, and from there on, all the other planets. Because the problem is, and if I quickly go back here, the problem is like Juniper, Saturn, those type of planets. They very far, to get there. It'll take us a extremely long time to get there, and with that, there's a lot of complications if you think about where you land, because they're also considering landing on some of the planets around, around not planets, sorry, around some of the moons around these planets. So it just becomes a lot more complicated the further it is. If you recall earlier this year with the Mars landing that we had on the 18th of February, it took something like 7 minutes, was it, for the communication to get back to Earth. So, you start adding a lot to that if it takes you 30 minutes for communication to get back. Something's already happened 30 minutes ago, and then you're only taking actions type of thing. So interesting how that works with a lot of these unplanned missions that's happening. But yeah.
Wait, go back to your solar little image there, where you were just now with all the planets. You made a mistake.
Why? What's the mistake?
Pluto is not a planet. Apparently, I'm just quoting.
Yeah, apparently. Also, there's other planets, one of which I think is called Erin or something, which is like dwarf planets and whatever. But for as long as I've learned my what do you call this, astronomy or whatever, there was I have my little rhyme.
I know. I knew it would trigger some people. This is what the scientists are saying. What, 2 years ago or something? That Pluto is no longer a planet. It's actually a
those
moon?
Scientists probably also smoked something. So no, I don't know.
I was also
have no
taught.
facts on backing that up.
Who remembers Magic School Bus? You remember that cartoon when you were a kid? Magic School Bus. Let's all go for a ride on the Magic School Bus. I loved the episode about space. And there was an episode about space, and they said Pluto is a planet. So I forgot what that lady's name is, the main teacher, but she taught me that.
So did you ever remember the rhyme? I understand the rhyme in Afrikaans though, but meneer van As my jas sal u nie pas. So meneer van As is Mercury, Venus, Aarde, Earth. My jas, Mars, Jupiter, sal u nie pas, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. That's how I remember it. So I can say the planets in order.
There was a
English rhyme, but I don't know that one.
I don't remember that one.
But there is lots of other little interesting dwarf planets and moons and all kinds of things, and asteroids even, that we have, and I didn't know that we have actually landed on. And I will talk about that in a bit. So that's pretty interesting. So from a space travel perspective or space race perspective, we have a new space race. In the 60s and 70s, we had that space race between, Russia and the US, and China was part of it. And, we now have a space race. Now, I'm kind of like calling NASA out as a separate company, although it could be forming part of a government. But we now have NASA, SpaceX, Blue Origin is Bezos, Amazon's CEO. So Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and then all the governments. So the government missions is a bit of a mix. There's a lot of tourism missions happening. So a lot of guys that'll take you to the edge of the Earth and bring you back, and you've kind of been to outer space. There's also some missions coming up to take you like around the moon. So you just do like a flyby around the moon. And so all those missions I think do serve a purpose though, because one, very much the same way as how Elon Musk and them from SpaceX is approaching space travel by having like lots of smaller missions. Every time something happens, they learn from it. Right now, they're blowing up rockets, but after that, hopefully it'll be, after that, hopefully it'll be a lot better. But something interesting though, and I never thought about that. Who owns the moon or Mars? Because in the old days, when you wanted to own something, you went and stuck your flag down onto it, or you cordoned it off and you called it yours. But it doesn't really work like that. No, actually not. I also thought the US, because they were there first and they put their flag down, but actually no. There is an outer space treaty, and that treaty was created like in the late 60s, went into action or whatever in the 70s somewhere. And that essentially means is that no matter, whose flags are planted on a planet or on a moon, no nation can own, that planet or the moon. And as of a couple of years ago, about 109, 110 odd nations have actually signed that treaty, with a couple of nations still haven't signed into it. But everybody signed into this and said, okay, cool, well, we're going to share this place. But there's an interesting thing I want to mention there is, and we could talk about it a bit later, but, resources is going to be important for us in the longer term future. And these governments are going to start fighting at resources. So if you get like some really important vein of whatever unobtainium that we need to make some rocket fuel, I'm sure we're all going to want to, mine it.
The new oils, if you will.
Yeah. So that's, I just see some space wars happening or something. Something is going to be happening there. So,
wow, that would be interesting. Imagine World War III turns out to be like a space war.
Yeah. In real life. That would be interesting. And obviously, hopefully, somewhere we'll have some aliens helping us out, which is something that I actually didn't think about is, do you believe in aliens?
I think it's foolish to think that we're the only forms of life in this vast universe.
Yeah, that's the safer answer, but I kind of feel the same way. Because you can just say yes, but it wouldn't sound as intelligent as what you made it sound. But yeah, what Joe said. But I agree with that. I think
I've practiced that for a while in front of the mirror.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's like what?
Good.
What's the politician answer?
Yes, but yeah. But I agree with you. I don't think we're alone. Why we haven't had like a space invasion yet, I kind of don't know.
Because I know why. Because the aliens came by, they're like, screw this place, and they fucked off.
Stay away, like guys, stay so far away. They just got fiber internet, guys. We safe,
That's like, oh, shame. Let them be.
Yeah, they're only on the iPhone 12. Leave them, boys. Leave them. Yeah. So talking about technology, when do you think we had the first landing on Mars?
Oh, crap.
And it's okay to be wrong, because I also didn't know that.
Well, let's see if anybody in the chats, you got 30 seconds to tell us if you know.
Don't Google.
Yeah, don't Google. Literally. You got 25 now. But, yeah.
Just
like,
ballpark it by decade.
I'm going to guess it. I'm going to guess it. I'm going to say in the 90s. I'm going to say in the 90s or early 2000s. That's my guess. And then what was your guess before you knew what it was? Like, what were you thinking?
Somewhere in the 2000s,
okay.
With the first Mars rovers and whatever. But
well, we got some quick answers coming in 2025, which is not 2018, 2025.
I did say landing. I didn't say crew. A spaceship landing. So
1995. I'm gonna go with Anonymous on this one because he seems to know his space stuff. So I'm gonna go with Anonymous Lex on this one. And then I don't know. Gaming says July 1976, being a little bit
He
more
Googled
specific.
it. You Googled it. I don't know gaming, but yeah, he's actually right. So
Okay.
NASA's Viking 1 mission was the first successful landing on Mars.
1976.
1976.
The same decade that we went to the moon.
Yeah.
We landed in the 70s.
No, we went to the moon in the 60s.
Oh, it was in 60s. Sorry. Was it 60s?
But the first successful landing, was in 1976. It was like a half-a-ton lander, and it was supposed to only last like a couple of days. Like those missions were usually, planned for like a 90-day mission or something. But it survived up until like 1982. And it was obviously collecting evidence, not sending it back to Earth, obviously, but collecting evidence that was, sent back as images, I guess, back to Earth. But yeah, it was powered by like a little plutonium mini nuclear generator. It's before the time of like solar arrays and all kinds of things. But yeah, and then after that, there was another mission a few months after that, because again, there's an optimal time to get to Mars, though, right? Because of how these planets orbiting around the sun, orbiting around the Earth, when it's the closest time for you to get to it. Because in one of my previous slides, I did say that it can take anything from 80 to 150 days to get to Mars. You obviously want to take the short trip, Yeah. So that's why there's launch windows. And they obviously launched 2 missions during that launch window. And the second one was also 1976. And they were also collecting some evidence and things, but that one lasted only like to 1980. But that was interesting because I didn't know that.
That is
I really thought it was first in the 1920s, in the 2000s.
1920s.
2000s. I mean, that's how far the 2000s feel back, dude. It's 20 years ago. Yeah, it's 100 years ago. It's like that in tech. But yeah, I mean, subsequent to that, we had like lots of missions to Mars, and I don't want to, stick on that because we can go and Google all these things. But we had the 1997 mission. 2004, there was the Spirit rover. There was another one again called the Robotic Explorer Opportunity, which is the one that's in the picture, and the Phoenix lander, which is almost looked like a little oil rig out at sea. Yeah, and I mean, these things were mixed sizes, something the size of a microwave to something the size of golf cart. So, a lot of different size vehicles. Interesting though, the Spirit rover, the Opportunity, that one only died in 2019. That was 5,111 days, I think, and it only died because of a dust storm. So it launched at almost I don't know how long is that, 10 years. So yeah, and as it goes, we obviously had 18th of February 2021, the Perseverance rover. That was a huge success because we were like waiting for that since last year, and the Ingenuity helicopter that was part of that mission. But like I said, all of this we can Google that. That's not important at the moment. What is important though is why is all of these missions happening?
Danny.
What did I say?
Proofread your shit.
What did I say? Did I misspell something?
And art goes on and on till 2021.
Does see you can see that I don't.
Look at that, he fixed it.
You can see that I
Nice.
don't copy and paste. There we go. You happy?
Yeah.
But importantly, SpaceX. I think SpaceX for me is interesting because traditionally, the methods, if we just look at how much it costs to send somebody to space, though, right? So it's like $200 or $100 million to send 4 people to space. Like, imagine that ticket, like a $50 million ticket to go to space. Like, that's not financially viable for individuals to go in the future in terms of space. So, where that's heading to in terms of making those trips cheaper with people that want to go versus people that can afford to go, you kind of want to make that into something affordable, especially in the longer term when people actually want to vacate, move to a different planet, because that'll be a thing 50 odd years from now. If space travel can come down to the price of, let's say, 2 or 3 million rand, people would pay that to go and live overseas. Jobs will definitely not be a problem because they need the people to work there. So I think it's going to be a reality if that cost comes down. Now, one of the options of bringing that cost down, and that's something we've seen with SpaceX, because as we have in the past, and it's one of the reasons why the space shuttle was so popular, or not popular, but successful is probably a better word, is because it was reusable. Like, it wasn't something that would come back to Earth, fall in the sea somewhere, and you had to like scrap it. It was because they could kind of like, give it a wax and fill it up and off it goes again, type of thing.
Yeah.
So, but that was all technology based on how it worked. Whereas with SpaceX, that's a lot newer in terms of how they're approaching bringing that cost down. And the approach that they are taking, as opposed to NASA is saying, like, we can get to the moon, no problem, and from the moon we'll get to anywhere else. SpaceX is saying is, well, no, we'll have reusable rockets. So, let me go to the next picture quickly. So the Starship and the Super Heavy rocket, those two components, the bottom part is what comes back to Earth and it lands, and that top part is the part that propels you all the way to wherever you need to go to, and that part right at the tip is where it can currently fit about 100 people, including the cargo, including whatever. So it will move quite a few people into space, and obviously in the longer run you want to make that 200 or 300 people, but to go back to how it's going to work is this rocket, that little top part, will go into orbit, and then the Super Heavy rocket will come back to Earth. It lands all nicely, as what we've seen, it happens with some of the other missions. It then takes another little capsule that looks the same way as what the Starship looks, but it's full of fuel. It goes into space. These two things dock. It transfers the fuel, and then they both kind of like come back to Earth, and then it gets reused. And the reusability is massive. Like, if you look at those boosters, it's 1,000 times uses per booster, 100 times uses per tanker. Now, tanker is that second part that goes up, which is basically just a fuel can. And one ship lasts about 12 uses. Now, that 12 uses, we also need to understand, it does take that ship 26 months to get back because of optimal launch windows and whatever. So it's going to take you between 90 and 150 days to get there. But let's say we fly at an optimal time of like 100 days to get there. When it's there, it won't get back to Earth efficiently enough. So, you'll need to wait 26 odd months before the trajectory or whatever is good enough for you to come back to Earth as efficiently enough. So, and then at that, obviously, that rocket's going to take a lot of eating. So 12 uses per one of those ships is what they, plan to use. But you will launch these things in convoy. So you won't just send one, you'll send like 10 of these things, and they'll all just hover somewhere in space and then eventually go. So you could potentially take 1,000 people up in a matter of days, and they'll all land there 3 to 4 months later. But that concept for me is
there in-flight meals? Because I think that's important.
I think so, because nobody can survive without food for 90 days. And I don't think they've done the hibernation thing yet. But yes, that is going to be interesting, because there's not been, there's only been like, let's call it gray inside pictures of like what the shell looks like. There's been no like, okay, this is the seating arrangements, first class, economy, emergency exits. Like, they haven't shown those pictures yet. But I'm assuming it's going to be in some way comfortable, because you will be sitting there for 100 days
Mm.
doing I don't know what, observing.
What was that
Um,
movie where the two woke up mid-flight to somewhere? They were going to a planet. I think they were going to Mars.
I know that movie. Yeah, that was quite
Passenger, I
good.
think.
It's the Passenger. Yeah,
Passenger, yeah, that was crazy. That's like
yeah.
that's what would you do?
I know because especially where and we'll talk about hyperflight and hyperspace travel towards the end. But yeah, I mean, in a situation where things don't happen in a jiffy, yeah, if there's no entertainment on that ship, you got a bit of a problem. But all of this, I mean, like I said, cargo. So I think I have a slide. Let me skip to the next one. This one is quite important. So why I bring this slide up now, it might not be super clear, but there's lots of like little vehicles going from the left to the right, and some of the ones that stands out is like the Falcon 9 rockets lately, the Saturn V rockets, and then that Mars vehicle, which is essentially the collective of the Starship and the super rocket. But look at the payload. Now, to put this into perspective, the space shuttle is not on here, which is like disappointing. But the space shuttle, which was playing an important role in the last couple of years because it helped build quite a few things. It fixed the space telescope, the Hubble Space Telescope. It took stuff to the International Space Station. But the Saturn V rocket, although it's currently the biggest confirmed, tallest, heaviest, whatever, powerful rocket that's ever been operational. I mean, the Mars vehicle is still like, we that's where we're working toward. But that was like launched in the 70s. And we haven't seen anything bigger that can take that massive cargo of like 135,000 kilograms of cargo anywhere, The only other multi-purpose way of getting cargo anywhere was the space shuttle, and that was only 30,000 kgs.
Mm.
But this Mars vehicle can do 550,000 tons of cargo. So that little white lines that's at the back there, that's like the bar graph showing just, how big is that thing's boot. And it can take like a ton of stuff somewhere. Now, if you think about it, if we want to start building stuff in space somewhere, especially like a habitat where we can have more flights coming, we need to start. Have you ever thought about like a survival game? And for the guys in chat that's playing games, have you ever played one of these survival games where you wake up naked on a beach with a axe, and like the first thing you do is you go and chop trees, then you make this, then you start, hunting, then you make a fire, whatever. Like eventually you work up towards iron, towards, whatever. And that's what we'll need to do when you go to space like that. You will need to mine resources that's there. So mining will be an interesting concept because we'll be mining reusable resources that's in space, that we think that's there, because a lot of the stuff we haven't really brought back to Earth, especially from a Mars perspective. But we also need to take the necessary equipment there to build we need to take like a hammer and a shifting spanner and a screwdriver there to go and build the big stuff. And we'll make that big stuff out of locally available resources that gets mined. So that's why we need a massive cargo bay. And obviously not, you won't just do one trip with it, you'll do like multiple trips, but eventually, we'll have a Debonair's or something on Mars because all of the things will be built,
No, dude. It's going to be a Starbucks. That's the first thing they're going to build.
Starbucks, probably. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, and I mean, we're going to see something as early as 2024, 2025 for the Mars vehicle. Now, obviously in the news, we've seen a couple of days ago that SN10 capsule. So the SN10, that is the Starship, the little top part, the part that's going to carry people. Like that's the part that they've been testing though, right? Because the rockets is not an issue. The rocket that's strapped behind that thing is essentially just the bigger version of the Falcon 9. But that top part, the part that keeps the cargo and that keeps the people, like that's the parts that they were testing at the moment. That's why they've been doing these low orbit flights, etc. with it. And yeah, there's been some successes like SN5 and SN6, and 8 and 9 and 10 all blew up. But SN11 is already standing on the runway since yesterday, or the launch pad since yesterday. They're sending it up soon, And The other ones are still being built. It's up to SA-19. So they are going through iterations of this without getting too technical, but the steel they're using, the carbon fiber they're using, all of those components to try and figure out what the best recipe is for this rocket going forward. So yeah, these things blow up, and it's not good, I guess, for them from a business model perspective, but this is R&D. This is what's needed for us to take that next step, because space travel and that long-term space travel that we're hoping to see is not possible yet. Like, we need these iterations, we need these steps to get there. And the best thing that I think could have happened is for this market to be privatized a little bit, because for the most part, it's only been dominated by governments, and the governments don't necessarily have the same aspirations as what somebody like SpaceX has, with actually being a multi-planetary human race. So, remember in the previous future, we spoke about electric cars, and I was telling you, like, when fossil fuels eventually dies off, what's going to happen with that, and I'm seeing, like, because Shell or whoever that's got like these recharge things to charge your Tesla or whatever, like, I am seeing that eventually we are going to be having a Shell Ultra City one stop somewhere in space, or a engine, one stop or something in space, because that's the next step in terms of creating fuel. Now, fossil fuel is debatable, because one of the fuels that we use, it's not the methane version. There's another fuel that we use, and I forgot its name now. It's actually made partially from oil. So that's one of the fuels that we can use, but we don't, because there's no oil on Mars. So we're not making that type of fuel. There's different types of rocket fuel that can get made. But I do see some of these players eventually entering that space of making fuel. So, somebody like SpaceX or whoever will be the enabler for a Shell or a Sasol or whoever to go and put up a plant to make rocket fuel or to make fuel, whatever that new fuel is for the future. Now, a different approach that's currently happening, and we've been talking about SpaceX quite a bit now, is NASA's approach. NASA has something called the Artemis program, and there's been lots of stuff happening in that program. They're actually like approaching iteration 2 or 3 now with it, but the first flights and things where it takes people to the moon is going to be in 2024. And they will also be taking the first woman to the moon, which I never thought about until I read that. But NASA is taking the approach of building like a lunar gateway on the moon, where you could stop over, there's a launch pad, refuel, and off you go again. Unlike SpaceX doing the refueling while you're in low Earth orbit, NASA's taking a completely different approach. And one of the things that NASA is doing at the moment with the Artemis program is highly reliant on like robotics and mechanized type of mining, etc., and doing like exploration from low moon orbit space. And that's like where this is starting. So one of their first starts is 2024, where this is going to start happening, and they see themselves mining resources on the moon, and then repurposing those resources for building materials, etc., which is where an interesting component comes in, 3D printing in space. Because again, if we need to be building buildings, if you think about how big buildings and things are, we won't be taking bricks and cement and things like that to space. We're going to be building it slightly differently now. Mars has these interesting components with how interesting printers or devices with how it looks, but they're going to be mining resources on Mars and using that resources as, and you've seen like on my printer, the filament, the material that they lay down to print. And that is probably what's going to happen on Mars as well. But for the moon, like, this is what they've published. And NASA actually published a document, and I forgot to grab the link. I can post it in chat later. But they published a document like on the next 10 years on what's happening with the Artemis program, and that's publicly available, like exactly what they're going to be doing, et cetera, et cetera. And how they're going to be building these bases is quite interesting, and they're going to be doing that by mining local resources, on the moon, and taking that resources and converting it into building materials. But something interesting though is NASA had this extraterrestrial habitat challenge, and the winner of that was AI Space Factory, where they had to build using a type of 3D printing technology that could obviously be used on the moon, but they had to build an idea of a space habitat, so a building. So if you look at the detail of how this challenge worked and whatever, like they were crushing these things, seeing how much tonnage weight you could put on them, how it's designed, etc., etc. And there's different designs for all these things. But the bottom line is NASA's been running these challenges, privatizing or getting the private companies and whatever to come up with this technology around how they can 3D print buildings in space using, and they gave the criteria, I forgot that now, but they were using like very limited type of materials, but materials that would be available on the moon that you would be able to use as a cement in a way. And it works the same way as a printer. It just looks more like a robot that can freely move around this object and then build it based on the design. But that is something very easy to take to the moon if you think about the cargoes that get carried. I mean, imagine you need to take one haulage truck and one weird-looking six-wheeled robot to the moon. I mean, you can strip that thing down, get it to the moon, reassemble it, and then you have, your hammer and your spanner and whatever that you need to start building these things. So that was interesting. I've not seen anything else around that other than NASA promoting the use of 3D printing technology and things quite a bit. But yeah, I'm always excited about 3D printing. Then let's look at the next decade of what's happening. I think I was a little disappointed because I thought there was like more confirmed things happening, more juicier confirmed things happening, but there isn't. So over the next, and what I mean with juicy, like, okay, cool, when can I actually buy a ticket to go to Mars? Like, we're not quite there yet. So in the next decade, we're going to be seeing stuff like space tours. So Roscosmos is a Russian space agency, so they're going to be doing space tours. Now, that's going to be something that takes you out to the stratosphere. You'll cruise around a bit, you're in outside space, and you come back. And that's something cool that they are planning to do from this year. And I think one of the first scheduled missions is like in November or something. So that's going to be, I think pretty cool. Hubble Space Telescope is being replaced by the James Webb Space Telescope. Like, that makes the astronauts and scientists and whatever very excited, because Hubble is like 30 years old. And if you think about something that's 30 years old, just think about our phones that's 10 years old. Think about that camera we have in our phone that's gone from 1 megapixel to the new Samsung that's 108 megapixels. So I'm sure there's a reason why they're all excited about the Space Telescope. India is sending a crew to space. SpaceX is doing their first unpiloted mission to Mars. That's going to be like an exploratory mission, so they'll be doing very similar to what NASA is doing in terms of sending little rovers down and collecting all kinds of samples and analyzing things and finding optimal landing spaces, etc. Because
what's an asteroid insurance policy?
Asteroid insurance policy. So that's an interesting one. So
insurance. So
ESA. So the European Space Agency started with this thing where they will have an asteroid insurance policy because they believe like there's certain asteroids that might hit the Earth, and they are launching a exploration initiative or something to go and land on a specific asteroid. And
like the movie Armageddon.
Very similar to that. They didn't say like they're going to push it off its trajectory or blow it up, but
they're going to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. That is the European Space Agency. Well, there is the OSIRIS-REx asteroid sample return. So in 2016, there was a mission launched to the OSIRIS-REx asteroid. It landed in December 2018 or something, so like let's say 2018, 2019. And it's collecting samples, and that's going to head back to Earth soon and bring samples from an asteroid back to Earth. Now, that's just interesting because there is asteroids that's made up of different compositions. So there's metal asteroids, rock asteroids, whatever. But if we ever needed to blow up an asteroid, I'm sure it'd be good to know whether you're blowing up a piece of rock or you're blowing up a metal thing. So
That's true. I just read through some of the stuff you got there, and you say there's nothing exciting happening. I see a few things that are exciting, man. I like it. So, like SpaceX crewed mission to Mars already in 2024. That's not far away.
no,
The where is it? I saw it now. NASA mission to Titan. That's like
so that's one
cock far.
yeah.
That's
So
that's cock far.
yeah, but I mean
That's crazy.
So yeah, but what I mean, Juicy, is like when can we as humans see space travel? Because yesterday when we spoke about this off air, we were talking about when will we be going to space, and yeah, we as public probably not in the near future, not
No,
maybe even
obviously.
in our lifetime,
Yeah.
because you would need to be a highly skilled resource that's going to go there. But there is certainly talks of where this is heading, and if you just look at it, I mean, and let's look at Elon Musk, because SpaceX has been probably doing the most exciting stuff over the last few years that has paid off. I mean, I don't have an Elon Musk timeline now, but since 2002, when that company started, they had like ideas that was failing. Then they had, with this last little bit of money, they had their last rocket make it that didn't blow up, and then they got that contract from NASA in 2008, I think, because NASA obviously knew that they were going to be retiring the space shuttle, and they needed ways to get up to the International Space Station and not just rely on the Russians. So, but if we look at where Elon Musk has said what he's going to be doing and promised on what he's delivering at a lot of money, though, he's kind of like shown like, hey, what, when we said we're doing it, give or take a year, we're doing it kind of thing, So I really do think that, but with the way how SpaceX is planning it, sending 100 people at a time. Now, also, Elon Musk is saying like colonizing Mars to him means 1 million people. If I didn't do the calculation now, but I don't know at how many rockets you sent up at a 26. There's 12 rockets or something at a 26 month return flight. How quickly can we take a lot of people up? And then you need to start building an ecosystem there, obviously, to create that habitat for people to live. Now, that's probably 50 years away. I don't think they're going to want to send a 90-year-old toppy to Mars. So, I'm not going to make it. But I really do see towards the end of this century, we're going to see some stuff happening there. Now, also, let's assume technology improves at, that scale improves over time. It gets, a lot better, a lot faster, a lot quicker over time than what it did over the last few years. So I do see we're going to see leaps and bounds of development improvements over time. But yeah, if we just look at some of these missions coming up, like you say, a lot of them are exploratory missions. And we need that, though, because if we didn't have that mission in 1976 that landed on Mars to send us pictures back of what it looked like, whether it was 1 megapixel or not, is irrelevant. But if we didn't have that, we would have not had the rovers in the early 2000s. We would have not had all of these other missions. And obviously, the second best thing for me is the fact that they've privatized this a bit, because it's been dominated by governments. And
Yes.
by privatizing it, it brings a different perspective of what space travel means for us as humanity.
Yes. All right. Well, we have just over 10 minutes. Is there anything else?
I have one slide left.
Okay.
Sorry for the death by PowerPoint, but it's easier to show pictures. But this is the most disappointing slide, because what is better than rockets
Hyper
and
travel.
hyperspace travel. Now, how cool was it when we watched Star Wars and Star Trek and, the Starship Enterprise clicking a button and you go from one galaxy to another within a second, you know. Now, what is hyperspace travel? Hyperspace travel is essentially that spaceship traveling faster than the speed of light. And unfortunately, that is pure science fiction. That's not going to happen. Like that myth has been busted about 10 years ago by a bunch of scientists. And our best chance of seeing something cool happen, like Beam Me Up Scotty, is probably teleportation. Because there's been some advancements within the teleportation side of science, teleporting crappy little things. But
So wait,
yeah,
hyperspace is like that's never ever gonna happen, or it's never gonna happen in the next 100 years.
probably not in the next 100 years. I don't
Okay.
think a way for us to get um, to achieve that type of travel is out there yet. And I mean, I'm going in what the scientists are saying because I looked at that and that was the one thing I thought like, okay, cool, Elon Musk, when are you doing hyperspace rockets? And no, not Elon Musk, not yet. So that's sad because hyperspace travel would obviously, you know, that would just make space travel in a nick of time. I mean, we would be able to go wherever we needed to go to very quickly. So, but we don't have that tech yet. That tech
Yeah.
might exist in the future. Some aliens might give us the blueprints, but our science does not allow for it at the moment.
All right. So, what is the future of space travel then?
I think this future of space travel is what's happening now. It's what we are seeing unfold. It is this iterations that we are going to eventually get to Mars. And I think all of the technologies in its I don't want to say in its isolation, but the little building blocks exist at the moment. It's the putting all of these building blocks together, that recipe that's currently what's being worked on. And I think it's going to get there. I really think that in the next 10 years, we're going to see something interesting happening within space travel. It's just not going to be cool enough for us to experience it yet, where we can go for a quick ride somewhere and we'll go to Mars. I think it's a little far off from that, and as Elon Musk has also said that he thinks it'll take another 50 years for us to get to colonizing Mars. Now, what he means with colonizing Mars is 1 million people on Mars, whereas I think NASA with the Artemis program is planning to do about 100+ people on the moon. So that'll be the moon crew, mining, maintaining all kinds of things. And that's obviously excluding the fact that a lot of what's going to happen within the Artemis program is going to be robotics and things as well. So it's not going to be, from a safety perspective, just people doing it. I think robotics, etc. Because and I didn't have a photo of that, but the Artemis program, the initial part of it's not going to have actually a moon base. It's going to have like a little international space station that's in orbit around the moon. And that is only going to be inhabited or people staying there like once a year for like a few weeks once a year. The rest of the time, it's going to be doing robotic missions. It's got like some robotic AI arm that does maintenance around the little space station. It's a lot smaller as well. The size, they compared it to a spacious 5-bedroom house, which is in size like 15% or something of the International Space Station. So it's very small. It's not going to be a massive, space station-like thing, but it's the start. I mean, the space station was also a lot smaller a few years ago than what it is now, but that's a start, and it'll be like a NASA Airbnb. Guys will go up for a few days, few weeks, come back, do certain things. So, but it's happening. I
Cool.
think these things are happening, and we're going to see this unfold over the next 10 years. It's probably just not going to unfold to the degree of us getting an Uber to the moon quite yet.
Oh well. Thank you, Yanni, for. I now understand what you meant at the beginning of the show, and you're a little bit disappointed. I'm starting to feel a little bit disappointed myself. I thought that maybe, hyperspace or the
I also thought that.
possibility of going close to the moon or something was in our lifetime, but it doesn't sound like it. However, humans will always strive to discover. And I've said this before on the show. Like, I think we've come to a point where humans, we've pretty much discovered every inch of land on the earth. Maybe maybe there still are some parts, but I doubt it. The ocean is still, we haven't even scratched the surface of the ocean in terms of like what's down there in the darkest depths of the ocean. But the space, we look to the skies. Once we discovered all the land, we looked to the skies, and now I guess sky's the limit. Excuse the pun. But yeah, it's still exciting. I did see in that list some exciting things that are coming, that at least we will be able to witness as technology grows and advances, and as space travel becomes a little bit more advanced. The space war is not something I'm looking forward to. But everything else sounds promising. Very quickly, I don't know if there's a comment that you wanted to address or anything like that. There were some comments that came in.
I actually didn't watch the comments, funny enough.
That's fine.
But let's see if something stands out.
There was one. It was Anonymous Lex, when we were talking about traveling to Mars, and you mentioned how long it takes, and he said he wouldn't be worried, or something along the lines of he wouldn't be worried about the okay, here we go. Here it is. I found it. The seating and food and all that is good and easy, but to be in zero gravity for 6 to 7 months is crazy. They need to work on artificial gravity. There are a few theories. I didn't even think of that.
And that's an important thing. So obviously, the way how they try and achieve artificial gravity is having a bit of a spin on the spaceship. But that's also why a lot of the history that's run up now in terms of the space station, human beings being in space in low gravity scenarios, that data has actually also been very important, because you get muscle. There's actually a nice word for it, but like your muscles deteriorate because you're not fighting gravity in the same way. They have interesting ways in terms of how they try and have like little space bicycles and treadmills and things to exercise your muscles, but in reality, that is a problem. So, yeah, that's why all of the data that's being generated by these things, I think, is important. And I saw another comment from, I think it was Lasadas as well, or maybe it's been anonymous, but the same thing around the data with these rockets blowing up and whatever. Like, all of that's important, because if we don't go through these iterations, we don't learn from mistakes, and learning from mistakes is what makes things successful. Now, the component that I like, or the part that I like about SpaceX's approach, is how modular this is, because they're testing everything in isolation. Because if they had to try and test a spaceship that's 120 meters tall, that can take 5,000, 500,000 kilograms of weight, and it blows up, you lose the whole thing. Whereas they've tested a small rocket, they can make a big rocket, test that thing in isolation. They tested the front part, the Starship itself. That thing blows up a few times. There's learnings from that. And in the end, they just put that recipe together, And I think that's an interesting business approach, because...
Well, it's like baking. Sometimes you're not going to get the correct ingredient all the time, and sometimes the cake is a flop. But you just watch. And guess who's joined us now, Jannie? Germ Warfare. I watched Martian over the weekend. There's his little humor coming out. And I don't know, gaming has to go. So cheers. I don't know, gaming. Thank you for tuning in. So yeah, dude, this was interesting, to say the least. I think yeah, there's a lot to take in this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly did. That's why I was so taking it all in. But yeah, no, it's again, it's disappointing that we're not going to be able to go to the moon, man.
I know,
'Cause
right? I
I
know.
thought you and I could, like, get like on a shuttle together and just
Well,
go
if
to the moon.
ever there's a green card lottery ticket thing that comes up, my hand will be up. If ever, that one in a lifetime opportunity comes there, my hand will be up. So long as I can take my wife, my dogs, my family, my friends, like I've got some conditions. I'm not getting this brain go to Mars.
All good, man. All right, so yes, I still have the root beer cans. Don't worry about that. You just can't see them; they're in the back. That's a weird question.
That was
But
very
yeah.
confusing. Are they going to Mars with us? Joe Emilio litters Mars. Comedian litters Mars. That's the headline.
Oh boy, then I'm canceled for sure. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This was great. This is awesome. Our next episode is 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks from now, and it is on the future of warfare. Yeah, we're gonna be
Ooh,
talking about
yes.
weapons. We're gonna be talking about a lot of stuff. What is the future of warfare? I think we kind of touched on it. Maybe it's space wars. Maybe it's
Yeah.
lasers.
Do you want
Maybe
a
it's.
spoiler?
Have you already
What
been?
if what if I told you the future of warfare is this? A mouse. Like, whoopsie. What if I tell you the future of warfare is this?
Okay.
Would
So
you believe me?
computers, IT, cyber war. Okay, interesting. Um, so I will then. Why? What are you laughing at?
Germ,
Oh,
Germ's comments.
I have no interest in warfare. Yeah, sure you don't, Germ. Um, Mr. Punisher says pew pew. Um, well, I think that touches on what Yanni was saying. Information is warfare. So yeah, no, that's going to be interesting. But I want to know what the next big gun is. I want to know what the next big like bazooka is. I want to know if we're going to be like in Star Wars, like Hopefully, we'll
A
have better aim
lightsaber.
than yes, a lightsaber. How awesome would that be? How awesome would that be? Oh my word!
I know. I want a
Yes,
lightsaber. I need a lightsaber. Like, please, can I have a
you
lightsaber?
haven't even watched all the Star Wars movies yet, man.
Doesn't matter. I don't need
It
to watch all
does.
the movies to have a lightsaber. I'm going to start watching it soon because we have our episode coming up.
Yes, we do have a Star Wars special episode coming up in May because it is coincidentally on a Tech Tuesday, which happens to be on May 4, which is May the 4th be with you. So we're going to be doing a
Exactly.
Star Wars special on that. Okay, let me cut it here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to please go and become a member for as little as 50 Rand. And after 3 months, you get a Rebel hat of your choosing. So please go to the link in the description below. Support me monthly. Next to that, there's a link. Go there and sign up. It's quick, it's easy, hassle free. If you enjoyed this stream, please like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And then also, if you want to donate in other ways, you can also go to the link in the description below. It says support me, and you'll be taken to my website where there's various ways where you can support this channel if you enjoyed the content. And while you're at it, also check out rebelstoreza.com. Yes, represent. Almost
Straight out of Wuhan. Exactly.
It's way too proud of that.
People look at me funny when I wear this in the shops.
Good. That's the point.
Exactly.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will be back Thursday night. Thursday night, we're gonna be here. We're gonna have a nice. We're doing a new show. It's gonna be Yanni's gonna join us. We're gonna have Bevan. We're gonna have Mikhail, and it's gonna be the four of us just talking a lot of crap. And we're calling it a late night chat. So please tune into that. It's going to be a very general topic, very general conversations, and just four guys having fun, talking a lot of crap, and yeah, laughing. And we hope that you will join us for a nice, chilled conversation on Thursday evening. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if I don't see you then, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you at the next one. Cheers.